The Atlanta Braves are 8-5 and in first place in the NL East as we head into today's off day, the first of the season. What have we learned so far from the first 13 games? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, your daily source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, award-winning baseball writer and podcaster. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can find all my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. Speaking of the newsletter, for premium subscribers today, we dropped a whole breakdown of Austin Riley, where he is after the Angels series, and what we saw that was different in the Angels series from what he was doing in the first couple series of the year, and why I'm encouraged that the old Austin Riley is still in there. Again, bravestoday.com for premium subs. That is out there right now. We're probably part of the Belief Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com to get started. 8-5. I think if you had told any of us who were worried about all the pitching injuries and worried about 2 years of, it felt like, offensive underperformance going into opening day, that the Braves would be 0-5 at the end of that 13 games and 13-day stretch, I don't think there's very many of us who would have been disappointed. And at the same time, it almost feels a little bit disappointing. And I think it's kind of because of the way that this unfolded, right? The way that the Braves ended up getting up 2-0 in Arizona, but not being able to close the series out and losing 2-1 and 6-5. And then losing the opener in LA when you hit the buzzsaw of Jose Soriano and rocking a 3-game losing streak there in this to still finish 8-5 is, I think, fantastic. Speaking of, you haven't lost a series yet. And speaking of that, I'll discuss it more in the third segment. We're doing this fun thing over in the Braves Today Discord. We're calling Braves Imperialism, where every time you beat a team in a series, you get to take a player from their roster as long as it makes sense, roster-wise for Atlanta. And if you lose a series, they get to take a player from your roster. So we're tracking what that lineup would look like. Pitching staff, lineup, bullpen, all of that stuff. It's in the Braves Today Discord, but I'll talk about it more in the last segment for those of you who want to stick around. Let's talk about what we've learned here, right? Because I do feel like some of the preconceived notions we had about what was going to be good and what was not going to be good are different after 13 games than what we thought they would be. I think the number one place where a lot of us, and I'm not, just us in general, got it wrong is the pitching staff. I think the belief was, because of all of the injuries, that the weak point of this Braves team would be pitching. As you head into today's off day, the Atlanta Braves have the best ERA in baseball. They've covered 115 innings, for all their games, with a 2.03 ERA. And not only is it the best in baseball, it is close to half a run better than the next closest team, which is the New York Yankees at 247. And the New York Yankees, yes, they're an organization that does not have Garrett Cole, does not have Carlos Rodon, but they have their ace in Max Fried, just like we have our ace in Chris Sale. They have, it's similar situations there as far as pitching staff goes, right? They're missing guys, we're missing guys, and yet we're still almost half a run better than them. And when you look at the way Atlanta's doing it, it's pretty evenly distributed. Atlanta's rotation has the fourth best ERA in baseball at 2.79. And they're not leading in strikeouts. They're 11th with 63. Now, granted, you have to keep in mind innings pitched not everybody has the same number of innings pitched and all of that. And even if you look at like strikeouts per 9 innings, that's not necessarily the best way to do it because there's other things that influence that. But let's try this let's see if I can pull strikeout rate. Here we go. Atlanta's pitching strikeout rate of 23.9%. MLB average is 23.3%. So as a entire roster, entire pitching staff, Atlanta's pitching is pretty close to just barely above league average. The leaders in strikeouts, Toronto, Cleveland, are both over 29%. When you try to isolate this to just starting pitching, you see that the Braves have a couple guys that are kind of hovering in there in the top 30, 40 pitchers in the league, right? Grant Holmes, 3 starts, 2.55 ERA. That is tied with Tarek Skubal for, I guess, technically 29th, not 30th. That's tied with Tarek Skubal. They've both thrown 17 2/3 innings. Holmes has 14 strikeouts. Skubal has 16. Now, Holmes has 6 more walks. That's an issue he has as a starter. But they've both allowed 5 earned runs. And it's just, it's a little bit, that's where you are. Ronaldo Lopez, 1.15 ERA through 3 starts. That is 11th best in baseball. Bryce Elder is tied with Shohei Ohtani and Eduardo Rodriguez for the lowest ERA in baseball. All 3 guys have made 2 starts. Elder has more innings than either one of them. He has 13. They each have 12. Elder has more strikeouts than either one of them. He has 13. They both have 8. Elder has less walks allowed than both of them. He has 2. They have 3 for Rodriguez and 4 for Ohtani. It's small samples. It's 2 starts. But the thing that we automatically assumed a lot, and by we, I mean a lot of people who were just concerned about the injuries, automatically assumed is that the rotation was going to be a liability. And so far this season, you've seen individual performances that weren't great. Jose Suarez as the 5th starter, that first time out, wasn't great. Martin Perez as the 5th starter, arguably also was not that great. But on the whole, the rotation has not been the liability that we thought it was going to be. When you look at the bullpen for the Braves, they have been pretty good as well. Atlanta's bullpen ERA is 0.82. It is not only best in baseball, it is 0.7 of a run better than the next closest team, which kind of shocked me. The Texas Rangers are at 155. The Mets are 3rd. The Mariners are 4th. Reds, Brewers, Yankees after that. The Colorado Rockies have the 8th best bullpen in baseball, which shows you this is small sample size stuff. This is going to normalize a little bit. But this is the model we saw in 2024. In 2024, the Atlanta Braves had one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. Atlanta's bullpen ERA, 3.32, was 3rd best in the sport. Atlanta's rotation ERA of 3.58 was 3rd best in the sport. And when you combine all of that, they had the best ERA in baseball. And even with all of the offensive injuries Atlanta had, remember at one point in time, Atlanta's lineup down the stretch had DFA'd players starting at second base in Whit Merrifield, in right field, or I guess slightly left field in Ramon Laureano, a trade acquisition of Jorge Soler in right field, and Gio Urshela, a DFA'd player, at third base. 1/3 of your lineup was DFA'd guys, and another guy was a trade acquisition you got at the deadline. And that pitching staff drug the offense and the team to the postseason. So far this year, again, very early, that model looks like it's being replicated. And the good news this year, as compared to in 24, is in 24, granted it was a more sustainable sample size, right? But you did this with all of your guys, right? Atlanta did not have a ton of egregious injuries in 2024. They did lose guys, don't get me wrong. Spencer Strider made 2 starts. They lost Hurts and Waldrop for a month and a half in there. They lost Max Fried for a couple weeks to an ulnar neuritis issue, the nerve of the elbow, which is scary. They lost Ronaldo Lopez for 2 separate stints, forearm inflammation and shoulder inflammation, which that's the one that ended up taking out pretty much his entire 2025 season. But so far, it looks like that is being replicated. That model of the pitching is really good. And we should be able to get Spencer Strider back in hopefully a couple weeks, which takes care of the issue of your 5th starter being a liability. Whether it's Jose Suarez or Martin Perez, I think we can all agree that's not optimal. There's an argument about should they be bringing up Didier Fuentes or J.R. Ritchie, and I'm not arguing with that. I'm just not arguing with that take at all. I think you could make a really easy case to have Didier Fuentes up as the 5th starter and get rid of one of either Perez or Suarez, but the organization is trying to preserve as much depth as possible by not moving on from a guy before they have to. When Strider comes back, they're going to have to move on from one of those guys. Their hope would have to be whoever they put on waivers passes through and that they can outright them to Gwinnett, and that guy does not elect free agency. But you're doing this without Strider. You'll get him back. And then at some point in time in the summer, and early indications are that we're more likely to get Hurston Waldrop back first than Schwellenbach, simply because Waldrop's surgery, the reports from that area, it wasn't as bad as they thought it would be. And so he's farther along in the rehab than Schwellenbach is, who we haven't got an update on in a while, by the way. You could add those guys to this rotation that currently has one of the best ERAs in baseball. Through 13 games, I feel a lot better about the pitching staff than I did going in. Let's talk about the offense, though. There's good, there's bad. I'm not saying it's a problem, but I'm saying we should talk about realistically where they are. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. It's IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom-infused coffee. This is the delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack. They sent me a couple of these. I love them, right? 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix hydration sticks, 4 IQ Joe coffee sticks. Tons of flavor combinations with all of these to choose from. Protein bars, mint chocolate chip. They had a matcha chai one that my wife was like, you have to eat this. And it ended up being pretty good. I liked it. Blueberry pomegranate hydration mix, or blood orange, or lemon lime. You can do anything from replicate a sports drink to, have a sweet tea and lemonade flavor one. It's great for Masters Week, right? Coffees, vanilla spice, mocha, hazelnut, regular black. Tons of options here. They also have limited edition and seasonal flavors throughout the year. And they also have over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting. More people than ever are using IQ Bar's products. The Ultimate Sampler Pack has all 3, and right now you can get 20% off of all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get the 20% off, text MLB to 64,000. That's MLB to 64000. Again, that's MLB to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Let's talk about Atlanta's offense. There's good, there's bad. And I think we should kind of be realistic as to where they are. From a team perspective, the entire roster for the Braves, they are 5th in runs scored with 66. There's a little bit of funkiness in here because they've played 13 games. Some teams have played 12 or 11. The Yankees have played 11 games. To provide some context on how uneven the schedule has been so far, the Yankees opened on that Wednesday night on Netflix. They were the only team that played. They played the Giants. They had an off day on the 26th when most everybody else played. We didn't start until the 27th, so they were 2 days into their season when we played our first game. They then had an off day on Sunday, the 29th, Then they had an off day on April 2nd. Then they had an off day on April 6th. So they've played 2 less games in Atlanta, and they have had 4 off days, and today is Atlanta's first. I've never understood some of the weird quirks of MLB scheduling. This is one, where some teams get a bunch of off days to start the year, some teams don't get any, and then how you play a team twice in like 2 or 3 weeks. I've never understood that concept. Like, for instance, the stretch that we have coming up. The Braves will play the Guardians and the Marlins at home this weekend and early next week. They will go on the road next weekend to Philly to play the Phillies. So the 17th, the 18th, and 19th, Friday through Sunday. Then they have 4 on the road against Washington. And then without an off day, they come straight home and they play 3 more against the Phillies. So they will play 10 games in the division. 7 of them will be Philadelphia. I'm sorry, I can't do math. 6 of them will be Philadelphia. 10 straight division games, 60% of those are the same team. I've never understood why MLB does the scheduling like this. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It just really, I don't understand why you cram things in like that. May's the same way. Atlanta will play Boston the 15th, 16th, and 17th. It's a weekend series. And then, so they finish on Sunday. The next week, on Tuesday, they're in Boston for 3 more. So they play Boston. They have 2 divisional series. And then they play Boston again. Another situation of, I don't know why they stack these up so close together. Same thing with the Giants in June, mid-June, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they'll play the Giants. And then the next week on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they'll travel to San Francisco, play the Giants again. Anyway, I know it sounds like I'm complaining. I'm just pointing out it's weird. And the schedules never made a ton of sense to me. Anyway, but the Braves offense, 5th in runs scored. Home runs, they are 2nd in baseball in home runs with 17. The only team with more home runs than the Braves are the Dodgers. Dodgers have 21. And what's wild is the Braves are there in home runs. They are 2nd in baseball in home runs with none from Austin Riley, none from Ronald Acuna Jr. And they're still 2nd in baseball in home runs. Now, a lot of that's Drake Baldwin. He has 5. But the point is, the Braves offense from a runs perspective and from a home run perspective is perhaps doing better than I think a lot of people who were resigned to this has not been the same offense since Kevin Seitzer left. It looks like this team actually is doing okay. Now, granted, you had a blowout in there. You put up 17 runs against the Diamondbacks. That'll skew some things. You had a bunch of home runs in that game. From a batting average perspective, which is not the best way to evaluate a team, batting average perspective, the Braves are 5th in baseball at batting average at .254. The only teams ahead of them, and this is funny, the Marlins and Nationals both have a better batting average than Atlanta. The Nationals are 3rd at .266, and the Marlins are 4th at .262. Above them, it's the Astros at .271 and the Dodgers at .287. If you measured this via OPS, the Braves are 6th in baseball at .750. Like, by a lot of aggregate measures, the offense as a whole has been pretty good. Individually, like I mentioned, there are some players who are not there. I do think Ronald is starting to come around. He had 2 doubles in the series finale on Wednesday, and the one thing that's been pretty consistent is he's been hitting the heck out of the ball. That is the scientific, data-driven explanation, is he's hitting the heck out of the ball. Being serious, he has 6 balls in play over 100 miles an hour, And there's a significant underperformance between the quality of his batted balls and the results from them, right? His weighted on base average, his WOBA, if you will, is 252. The expected number is a 382. And there was a stat going around, I believe it was Braves Twitter, it was maybe where I saw it or read it, one of those two, about the impact that weather, wind, temperature, all of that has had on different individual players. 3 different Braves are on that list for having lost the most home runs to less than ideal weather conditions, right? I believe this was going into game 2 against LA. Ronald Acuna Jr., nobody had lost more home runs than Ronald Acuna Jr. Right behind that, Michael Harris was on that list, and Matt Olson was on that list. Together, they had lost, I think it was either 5 or 6 home runs on the season to weather effects. So, brutal. I mean, that's incredibly rough. I'm confident some of these guys are going to come around. Austin Riley's batting 200 on the year with a 552 OPS. Again, I wrote this morning over at Braves Today all of the reasons that I saw in the LA series that makes me think he's coming around as well. But what's amazing to me and what I love to point out here is Atlanta is 8-5. Despite Ronald Acuna Jr.'s OPS starting with a 5. Despite Austin Riley's OPS starting with a 5. Despite Michael Harris's OPS starting with a 5. Despite Mike Yastrzemski's OPS starting with a 6. Despite all of that, Atlanta's still 8-5. And some of that's been the really, really good pitching, which we talked about. But some of that has also been the rest of the offense is doing really well. Mauricio Dubon's been incredibly impressive. He's 15 for 45. He's got 2 homers, 4 doubles. He's driven in 9, and he's scored 7 runs. He's typically batting 8th, 7th. I think they moved him up to 6th the other day. But he's getting it done. Matt Olson's batting average is up to 280. He's 14 for 50. I will say with Olson, his strikeouts, he has 19 strikeouts in 13 games. He's also walked 7 times. But strikeouts are a little bit rough for Matt Olson. But 6 doubles, 3 home runs, 9 of his 14 hits are for extra bases. That's why his slug is a 580. The only regular with a slug better than that is Drake Baldwin, who is 17 for 53 with 5 homers and a double. He's driven in 15. He scored 12 runs. So there's been games where the offense as a whole has been bad. Jose Soriano in game 1. Game 2, game 3 against the Diamondbacks, right? But for the most part, the offense is working without Ronald, without Austin Riley. And once Ronald can more consistently get on base and is able to run a little bit more, we saw Austin Riley successfully get the read from Antoine Richardson and steal a bag in the series finale on Wednesday against a lefty to boot. Everything's starting to come along for the Braves, right? A lot of this offensive stuff is starting to go. Let's talk about where the Braves go from here. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsey Crosby. Let's talk about the upcoming series, the roster moves that are going to get made and everything, and then I'll explain that Braves Imperialism thing I was talking about a few minutes ago. So we got a little bit of updates on Sean Murphy. His rehab start, or his rehab in Gwinnett officially starts tomorrow. He was in Rome with the Emperors. He did simulated games. He did not actually officially play. Now that AAA Gwinnett is back, and they're the only affiliate that's at home this week, he's reported there. His rehab will officially start on Friday. I got a text, And the plan, like, he's going to catch some on Friday. He's going to catch some on Sunday. This is not, the more I talk to some people, I mentioned earlier in the week or last week or whatever it was, that his rehab outings have typically been short. They are treating this more like spring training for him than a typical rehab outing. That's why he's only going to be in for a couple innings and then he's going to leave the game. Because they're treating this like early in spring training where the vets would be out there for a couple innings and then they'd be replaced and you'd have somebody else come in to finish the game. So it is going to be, I don't think it's going to be 4 games and he's back. I do think it's going to be a little bit longer. I'm curious to see, do they have him travel with the Stripers? Are they prioritizing the competition level? Or are they prioritizing comfort and convenience? And as Gwinnett's schedule changes and they start, go into road trips and stuff, does he change levels? I'm curious about that. But he's going to come back sooner rather than later. When the rehab starts, they're going to have him back by the end of the month, which prompts the question of Jonah Heim. He now has 2 hits and 15 at-bats, 1 double, 1 single. He scored a run. He's driven in 2, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. He's batting 133. We kind of talked about this the other day. Don't know what they're going to do, but you can see an argument for both. In the meantime, you're going to see the Braves play Jonah Heim some in this series. They face a lefty on Saturday and lefty Parker Messick. So it's Slade Sassoni versus Bryce Elder on Friday. It's lefty Parker Messick, who's in the middle of a breakout season right now, versus Martin Perez on Saturday. That'll probably be a Jonah Heim game. He'll be behind the plate. Drake Baldwin will DH. And then Sunday on Peacock will be Chris Sale versus Tanner Bybee. Interesting broadcasting quirk there. Jason Benetti is the full-time play-by-play guy for the Peacock games on Sunday night. But they try to grab local people to work with them. So they're going to have Corey Kluber, Guardians great, who Spencer Strider loves him, by the way. That's one of Spencer Strider's heroes. So I imagine he's going to probably try to find a way to make sure he gets a chance to talk to Corey Kluber and all that. And Andrew Jones will be the 2 analysts in the booth with Jason Benetti. Interesting, right? So you'll see Jonah Heim play at least once there. And then projecting out to next week for the Marlins, Yuri Perez in Game 1, Max Meyer in Game 2, Chris Paddock in Game 3. So you catch Yuri, but you don't catch Sandy Alcantara, unless they change their rotation, should pitch before they come to Atlanta. You also miss Jansen Junk, who has changed his pitch mix quite a bit and has been kind of one of the breakout guys this year for the Marlins. He just threw 7 1/3 innings against Cincinnati. Looked pretty good. Early trouble, got out of that. 87 pitches for 7 innings. And ERA of like 3 in his first couple starts. So it's not the worst rotation in the world, right? The way you can work around some of this stuff. And so the Braves are in a situation, it really does feel like you should be able to keep the wins going. Because again, you are in first place right now. You are in first place by half a game over the Marlins. Because you have 8 wins. I think they have 7. Same number of losses. I feel, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, I think. I know I wrote a piece about it. I'm pretty sure I did a podcast on it too. About how this schedule is a little bit more favorable than what you started last year with, right? Yes, the 13 games in 13 days was terrible, including 7 on the road on the West Coast. There's a difference in going to like Pittsburgh and, Pittsburgh and Minnesota for a series versus going to Arizona and LA for a series. But you went to LA, you missed the Dodgers, you get the Angels, right? So I feel good about Atlanta's ability to fight a good Guardians team. Hopefully the offense continues the growth we've seen. And you get to the point where, hey, there you go. First place or close to first place when you head into Philly to take on Philadelphia, who has been struggling. They are 4th in the division right now. They're 6-6. The biggest thing, they have a negative 15 run differential. And I know a lot of people kind of talk about how me and other people in the Braves kind of podcast sphere, I'm thinking about Jake a lot here on this because he gets this criticism too. We talk a lot about like the expected stats. We talk a lot about like run differential and stuff. And I think it's important to understand that this is how the players and the teams think. We heard this on the broadcast on Wednesday. Wiley Ballard was talking about Michael Harris and how he has underperformed based on his batted ball inputs. He was one of those 3 Braves that had lost multiple home runs due to weather and park effects, right? And Wiley relayed an anecdote from when he was talking to Harris. And he said, like, do you look at those things? Like, do you pay attention to that stuff? And Michael Harris said, like, yes, like that's how we evaluate if what we're doing is right. And in essence, it was Michael Harris admitting that, like, at the end of the day, you need to have the results. Like that, nobody's denying that you need to have the results. But it is more reliable, especially in a small sample size, to focus on your process of how you're trying to get those results than chasing the results at all costs. And so when we talk about batted ball quality, hard hit balls, and all of that stuff, that's what we're doing. We're focusing on the process. It is much more reliable to hit the heck out of the ball. In the long term, it is much better to focus on hitting the ball hard than it is to just focus on like weak contact and trying to shoot the ball the other way. Situationally, that is the right thing to do. But in the macro perspective, it's better to focus on that. And that's what the teams do. Same thing with run differential, right? I was listening to a national media person. I want to say it was Buster Olney. I want to say it was when Buster Olney was on 680 The Fan. And he was talking about discussions with MLB front office people. And he said the number one thing that they bring up when talking about how their team is performing is run differential. Rather than looking at the actual record and looking at, they look at the run differential and the expected. And again, end of the day, results matter. But they understand that it is more reliable. You can take out some of the random flukiness that happens in baseball if you evaluate your team by runs scored and runs allowed. Atlanta has a plus 34 run differential. Yes, you had a blowout win in there. You beat Arizona 17-2. If you make that a 3-2 win, you take out 14 of those runs, Atlanta's plus 20 run differential is still the best in the NL East. It is third best in the National League, behind the second place Milwaukee Brewers at plus 24 and the New York Yankees at plus 34. So if you change that 17-2 win to a 3-2 win, Atlanta still has the third best run differential in the National League and the best one in the East. Another sign that this team might be better than it feels like they are, simply because of the way that road trip unfolded, right? Blowout in game 1, narrow, you escape with a win, 2 homers in the 9th in game 2, you lose game 3 2-1, you lose game 4 6-5, and then you lose in the opener of the next series to have a 3-game losing streak. Keep that sort of perspective in mind because the teams look at it that way. That's how Alex Anthopoulos is evaluating this team, is run differential. And we saw last year that run differential, and it can only go so far when you have a ton of 1-run losses. But like this team was 76-86, and they ended up with a minus 10 run differential. But in 1-run games, they were 21-35. That was like the run differential said they should have been closer to a 500 ball club. They were 10 games below because they were so bad in 1-run games. I've gone back to this well a couple times. The Miami Marlins, I think it was 2023, they finished 84-78 despite a negative 57 run differential. Part of the reason they had a good record like that was they went 33-14 in one-run games. They overperformed in one-run games. They ended up making the postseason because they flipped what should have been a losing record into a winning record. And then in 2024, yes, they had some personnel losses, but they went back to roughly even in one-run games. They were 23-20, and they finished in 5th place. And they ended up being within one game of their run differential, of what the expected should have been. So did the Nationals, by chance. The Phillies overproduced in 24 by 3 games. The Braves underproduced by 3 games, and that was the difference in the Phillies winning the division and the Braves not. They had the exact same run differential win-loss record of 92-70. That's how teams evaluate these things. All right, let's get to the Braves imperialism thing real quick. If you're a college football fan, you sometimes may have seen those maps that go around on the weekends after a college football team beats another one. And the idea behind college football imperialism, it's a visual thing, but this is like all of the counties that your college is the closest to these counties, right? So like around Athens, there's a bubble. Around UGA, around Georgia Tech, there's a bubble, all that kind of stuff. And when you beat another team, you take over their land. It's all a hypothetical exercise. Don't think this is anything real, but like you take over their territory. And so you now have more territory. And if you lose, the team that beats you gets yours. And it's a whole kind of just little fun thing to track. We're doing something similar to that in the Braves Today Discord. The link's in the episode description if you want to join in and vote on all of these. But what we're doing, just for fun, is when the Braves win a series, we get to go find a player on the opposing team that roster fit-wise makes sense to add to Atlanta. Like, the Braves aren't going to go take somebody's catcher because we have Drake Baldwin. Sean Murphy's due back soon. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're saying at the time, after the series, we're all voting in the Discord on who we should take from their team. And then we have to make a corresponding roster move. So for instance, you beat the Royals. Well, guess what? We took Bobby Witt Jr. He's a fantastic shortstop. We know that. It lets Mauricio Dubon be a utility guy. So we added Bobby Witt Jr. We DFA'd Kyle Farmer to make that happen. And again, this is all a hypothetical exercise just for fun. But I wanted to explain it because the Discord asked me to tell you guys about it so that we can kind of track this throughout the year. When we beat the Athletics, based on what the team looked like at the time, which was that 5th starter was pretty weak in Jose Suarez, we voted to add Luis Severino. Add another starter to the team, which meant that Jose Suarez got DFA'd. Okay, fine. So the rotation is now Sale, Severino, Ronaldo Lopez, Bryce Elder, Grant Holmes. You tied the series against the Diamondbacks. So you didn't gain anybody, but you didn't lose anybody, right? Series win over the Angels. We all voted last night. Add Jose Soriano. He looked phenomenal in game 1. Braves could not figure him out. Let's put that on the team. So we added Jose Soriano, DFA'd Martin Perez to do it. And to fit Jose Soriano into the rotation, we moved Grant Holmes to the bullpen. So in the Discord, we are tracking this team right now as far as here are your starting 8, here are your 5 bench pieces because one of them plays DH, right? Here's your rotation, here's your bullpen. We're going to do this throughout the year. I'm really curious to see what this team looks like when the season is over. Based on you lost this series, they got to take a player. You won this series, they take a player. How many Braves are still left on this team at the end of the year? I'm curious what this looks like. But if you want to join in, it's a fun little side discussion thing that we're doing. The Braves Today Discord, the link's in the episode description, the link's in the show notes. So go check that out. We will be back. More content coming, whether it is later today, whether it is tomorrow. Lots of stuff coming. So stay tuned for that. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time on Braves Today.